Peace and love, black family. This is the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. UMAR Johnson. We are live and direct from the 2015 African Liberation Day, Birmingham, England. And I support 100% GKTV. That's right, gotkushTV. For the latest conscious information, trending news, and information that you can use, make sure you check out gotkushTV. GKTV, they got that information you need.
There was empires in Africa called Kush, Timbuktu, where every race came to get books. My success to you, even if you wish me the opposite. Sooner or later, we'll all see who the prophet is.
Through the vision in me, I can see it clearly. But there is gonna be peace, love and harmony, black understanding. Among my people, because they're gonna jump and shout, African liberation day. Oh yeah, yes we're gonna sing and shout, African liberation day. Because we're gonna jump and shout, African liberation day. Yes, we're gonna sing and shout, Africa Liberation Day. I like a talk for liberation. Check out what I fight for a free nation. No time for the liberation. Come in now, make friend now, ask anyone. Remove the sacrifice off of your hand and set fire to the plantation. Now is the time for revolution when all African have to live and carve out the good that come with the vision. I shall fulfill the vision, stand firm and strong.
Welcome to Birmingham St George's Community Centre. I'm we are with GKTV, your #1 conscious platform. We are here at African Liberation Day 2015, here in the heart of the Midlands, and we're going to go and take a look inside and see what's happening as we enter the St George's Community Centre for what promises to be an excellent community African event, filled with speakers such as the Honourable Esteemed Robin Walker, as well as Dr. Umar Johnson all the way in from the States, and somebody also said that Professor James Small will also be around for us as well. So some very notable African-centred speakers here today at the St George's Community Centre Hub, African Liberation Day, GKTV. We up here in the building alongside Dua Mutev and Ankh, and also as well Minister R, who'll be coming down a little bit later on. They're a bit lost in the traffic, but don't worry, it gets like that sometimes. But we're out on the road and we're going to take a look at what's happening here in the Midlands, African Liberation Day 2015. Come and join us and let's see what's going on.
This is GKTV. We're over here in Birmingham. As I said, we have to make sure we make it clear to you where we're at right now. We're up here in Birmingham. It's been very interesting up here in the Midlands over the weekend. We had an event just a couple of days ago where we had these youth coming together from different aspects, different parts of the UK. And with that, we've got this Pan-African 40 years Congress movement, 40 years in the making, African Liberation Day. That's where we're at right now. And when I say the event is popping, it's nice. You're going to see the footage, you're going to see it covered. So make sure you keep it on to GKTV. Right now, there's an issue going on in the UK. I told you, it's not just UK-wide, it's going across the world. Okay? And it's the issue to do with our youth. Now, a lot of the elders scratching their heads, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do? And we're here today at the ADL, ALD, African Liberation Day event. And an important part of that event, African Liberation, is our youth. Because, you know, I've got a few grey hairs in my chin right now. So with the information we have, you know, we have to be able to pass on that baton. But at the moment, we're trying to pass on information to a generation of people who are being attacked, marginalised, and utilised by other peoples for a certain purpose. And it's part of an overall, how I would term, or we would term, a destruction of our black youth using various nefarious methods. With us today, we've got Twilight Bey. Now, Twilight Bey is a specialist when it comes to street culture, understanding street culture, and the various different forms of which this street culture is now being identified and labelled by other people. You know, to therefore give us a misinterpretation. Street culture is something, it's not something new.
No.
We've had street culture. Anyone who grew up growing up went to play in the street. So street culture, you know, so I'd like to welcome Twilight Bey here with us here today on GKTV. You know, we're going to speak briefly in regards to who Twilight Bey is. You know, but we kind of got an insight on what you do. But firstly, we'd like to know a little bit more about the man, the history of Twilight Bey, and then we'll lead on to exactly what Twilight Bey is doing, or what you've been sent here to do on your time on the earth. So who exactly is Twilight Bey?
Well, you know, as you know, my name is Twilight Bey. I'm originally from Los Angeles, particularly an area called Watts. Grew up there. At the age of 17, I was a key contributor to the first peace talks between the Bloods and Crips in Los Angeles in 1988. 4 years later, that turned into a truce in 1992. Most significant truce between rival peer groups in Los Angeles at that time that basically saw a reduction, an 80% reduction in the murder rate in our community. After doing that, had the opportunity to work with Jim Brown, the great Jim Brown, American Football Hall of Famer. We created an organization called UMAR, I Can, and the emphasis was on the last 4 letters, I Can. And by working with Jim and working with other individuals who might have been classified as either street gang members or ex-offenders, coming together, going through a development process and professionalizing our ability to go into schools, go into prisons, go into housing estates, and even into some private businesses, and train and help people to achieve their full potential through developing the responsibility of self-determination. In doing that work, I've always been developed and taught by one of my other mentors, a gentleman by the name of Michael Zinzin, the importance of community organizing, community engagement. And so a large part of my work centers around community education. And that community education is around basically giving people who are dispossessed, displaced, and disempowered the opportunity to regain their political and economic independence and be able to take responsibility for mapping out the direction of their lives by taking back the agenda of determining their own futures.
So, I mean, over here in the UK, I remember when I was growing up, the first thing what introduced me to, you know, the rivalries or the gang rivalries as such in the United States, or brought it to the forefront with the film Colours. So the
Yes.
film Colours,
Yes.
So that's how we, I'm not saying all of us, but that's how many of us got to understand, you know, what was going on. And then you had the, you know, the so-called music which came out of that. I know. I remember watching the Boondocks, and there was one episode of the Boondocks where he went in on the hip hop music, and he had to make it very clear. I think the guy who made it, he done it in a funny way, but he made it very clear. Look, I'm saying this. Do not come kill me. Do not come shoot me. But I understand why he was saying it, and
I understand it in a funny way.
But there's a reality behind it as well.
Yeah, well, when you look at street culture, you know, the best way to understand it, because when we hear terms like gangs, these are labels that are developed by politicians and law enforcement agencies who basically are looking to target a part of the community that have been highly influenced and socialized by the worst of the worst of Western culture. And because our own culture hasn't not remained intact and has not sustained its integrity, as we've been subjected to various forms of political and socioeconomic attacks upon the way we live our lives, that leaves us open to influences from outside. And what I mean by open, and when I say we, I'm saying young people, because when I got involved in that lifestyle, it was a direct result of the fabric of my family being ripped apart. And that was a direct result of the political and economic circumstances of the environment in which we live. And instead of receiving support, and instead of receiving intervention services that helped to restore my culture, helped to rebuild my family. Instead, what happened is me, along with many others of my generation, and those who preceded me, end up being labeled gang members. Never something that we chose for ourselves in Los Angeles. And you saw basically a campaign to create moral panic, to basically say that gang members were the worst thing, and basically created a situation where we were dehumanized in the eyes of our own community. And when I say our own community, our own parents, our own elders, our own churches, our own business owners, the few that there were, started to see us in this negative light, and the way in which it had been painted by law enforcement agencies and by politicians. And so when that took place, it left us ripe for exploitation, and exploitation in the context of a criminal industrial complex. If you're going to privatize prisons, then you got to meet the demands of the shareholders, and you also got to meet the demands of those shareholders where they can see that it'll be a worthwhile, viable business. So for the last 27 years of doing this work, these are the kinds of things that we've educated people around, and helping people to understand. Before the term school to prison pipeline was even popular, we were educating people on what it meant to end up being excluded from school, to end up being in a school that engaged in social progression, where they passed you forward from year to year, and even if you had not completed that year, they would still pass you forward, and basically graduating or allowing people to leave school as functional illiterates, or people with not having the proper qualifications to even go into the job market. And so understanding those kinds of things and how they were working against us, and also coming to an understanding that the onslaught of programs like COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program, and the impact that it had on our community, from Marcus Garvey right the way through to the Black Panther Party, right the way through to the Civil Rights Movement, and the movement for human rights, which is often overlooked in the history of what we went through. That movement was decimated, and the Civil Rights Movement became the banner that was promoted by the state itself. But the reality is, we as Africans in the United States still do not have the recognition as human beings as we should. And I know people say, well, how can you say that? Look at Barack Obama. You know, Barack's father is from Kenya. He can place himself in the human family tree. His mother is of European heritage. She can place herself in terms of her family tree. Most African Americans born in that region of the world as a result of chattel slavery have no recollection or connection to where they come from or who they are. Very few have been able to remap and reconnect that information for their families. So those individuals on their birth certificates, they're known as Negroes. And Negroes is not a part of the human family. And when you look at the United States Constitution, people of African heritage are classified as 3/5 of a human being. So therefore, you're not quite human, you're not quite a dog, you know. And so this is the dilemma. And so when you got a government and a society that allows those types of crimes to take place, moral crimes they'll call them, because it's not enshrined in law that it's a criminal crime. But in the nature of an intelligent being, you know when something's wrong and you know when something's right. And in the context of what the experience has been, our community has been systematically attacked, systematically dismantled, and war has been waged on our community from the time we were brought there right up until the so-called time of emancipation. And as a result, our community has left its children to be raised, to be educated by an environment that does not love or care for what our future is to become.
Okay, so what has occurred in the United States, which you was active within, experienced, which has allowed you to be able to do what you do today. We're now here over in the UK, you're over here in the UK. And it's always been acknowledged that the UK is X amount of years behind the United States, but whatever comes out of the United States is guaranteed going to come over here. So you know you're seeing the same social political type of manifestation, which started off even more so with the Reagan-Thatcher years, and I'm talking about the economy in the United Kingdom, and over the past 10 years, you're seeing an even more rapid movement of that same type of social political aspect. Same with the demonisation. I mean, we can look at the demonisation going on since our parents come over into the UK. They say from the Windrush we've been there since time immemorial. But the point where the same systems which are in the United States coming over here, the same targeting of young people, claiming them as gangs. Because when I was younger, black folk roll as tribes. We're very tribal as a people. This is how we roll, especially in environments where we've got no choice but to be, but we're not accepted by people outside of that, so we've got no choice but to come together. And there's this fear of X amount of black people, especially youth, because they've got so much potential, so much, as them hormones are starting to change, and you've got a mighty tool that can be wielded. So the same thing over here, when we used to roll together, we'd be like 1,500 strong, and we'd roll. But we'd be rolling just to go and have fun together. We'd be rolling to, go clubbing, go partying, doing that kind of stuff. And to others it would seem aggressive, because when we all pile on a bus together, you have all the noise, and we'll just be, that's black folk. You go into a black barber's, it ain't quiet. You've got that type of environment going on. But to people outside, so that labeling started to happen over here. And now you've got that term where, same thing in the United States, what we used to see on movies like The Warriors, it's the same thing over here, gangs. But that same thing going on over here. And then you've got they start to link it with the drugs, and then you get the cases which are targeted on the TV. So you see that exactly the same picture, which is, so you being from the United States and just seeing like, we've seen all this before. We know exactly where it's going. This is going. What is the difference between the mentality of youth and the system and how it's being played out over here to what it is in America? Or is it you're seeing a carbon copy being replicated? I think
the conditions are a carbon copy. The way people respond to them will always be influenced by the context of the local environment. And what I mean by that is that, first of all, in the United Kingdom, you've had groups of youth coming together and doing things going back to the 1800s. If we want to go back even further than that, we can talk about the guilds that used to war in the city of London in the 12th, 13th, and 14th century and fight with one another. In fact, the guilds is what, from the guilds hall and the activity amongst the guilds that were fighting with each other and how they mediated their conflicts. All of that is what underpins the history of what became Company's House. So if you want to do any kind of trade in this country, your company has to be registered with Company's House. But then when you go back and you look at the India Company and all these different companies that they had, what did they do? They went around under the age of imperialism, pillaging other areas, robbing other people, and bringing the resources back here. And then they would be in conflict with one another over who was going to trade where and who was going to set up shop where. And you had drive-by shootings in the 10th, 11th, 12th century. They were just on horseback. You understand? So it's nothing new. What's different about it is that it's brown faces. And the way in which they respond to the brown faces in comparison to what was done when it was their own young people is vastly different. The other thing you got to look at as well is that with the influx of skilled, highly educated, cheap labor coming in from the European Union, it puts a particular strain and pressure on the environment here. But the position of our young people and our people in general has always been the same. We can be highly skilled, as it was when those who came over during the Windrush period. They were engineers. They had the qualifications and degrees that have been graded and have been assessed in the UK. So essentially, they were qualified by the academic structure and institutions in the UK to be an engineer. But yet when they came over, weren't allowed to carry on in those kind of jobs. They had to become a bus driver. They had to become a cleaner with high levels of education. So this thing about the influx of Eastern Europeans coming in and keeping our young people out of work, that's not the problem. The issue about our young people not being willing to work That's not the problem. Most young people I meet in this country are willing to work, but there's nobody really giving them those opportunities. And then they'll say, well, they need to know how to speak to employers. They need to know how to address things in a professional context. Well, no one's ever gave them that training. So after years of education, and they come out unable to understand how to maneuver in a professional context, that says something about the education system. So our young people have been socialized in a way that they are prime candidates for mass incarceration. And so that's where it's going to now. You know, you can trace it back to Thatcher, you can trace it back to Tony Blair and the Labour Party, and then now with the Conservative Party, again, the privatization of probation, the privatization of prisons. They're going to need bodies.
That's right.
And we are the ones who are not in a political or economic position to resist the attack that's coming. And a large part of that is sadly to say, but yet if we're going to move forward and focus on solutions, is the disconnect that happens in our communities that have been generated and developed as an outcome of the years and years of attacks and abuse that our people have suffered whenever we've tried to hold a family together, whenever we tried to build a community of our own, and whenever we had an opinion about a way of living that is beneficial to our sustainability, the dominant culture has attacked that.
Well, look, you heard it first from Twilight Bey. I think is this the first interview you've had with GKTV?
Yes, it's the first interview with GKTV, and you know, and I'm hoping to be able to do more interviews in the future. You know, we're here at African Liberation Day, and I just want to say that I'm here in the capacity of representing those who live the street culture, because there's a disconnect between our conscious community and our street culture community. And somebody needs to bridge that and bring that together. And that's a key thing that I'm in the process of facilitating in the UK at the moment. There's a group called the BCF, a movement called the BCF, where we're actually bringing together the key individuals involved in the street culture, governing the street culture, from London to Luton to Birmingham to Nottingham, Manchester. They've already come together. We're now looking out and asking Bristol, when are you ready? Derby, when are you ready? Leeds, when are you ready? If you're ready, you got to get in touch with us so that we can bring everybody together and take this movement forward. And you know, if you want more information about how we're doing this, you know, just like you're doing with GKTV, we have to control our own media outlets. We have to be able to communicate with our people. Modern technology allows us to do that a little bit more easier. So I have a radio show that I do called The Reasoning. It's broadcasted every Monday night. And if people are interested in listening to the show and following what we're doing, because The Reasoning Show is a part of a think tank that we developed, they can do that by catching us on visiting the website reasoning4action.com. And that's how they can keep in touch and become a part of this movement and help to bridge the connection between our conscious community, our street culture community, and our professionals and our political class in our community, because all of it needs to come together. Other than that, our children will be marched off into the prisons and continue to be overrepresented as they are right now at this point in time.
You know what, I've got you on my Facebook, and now I see it now, and I think I see the show on a Monday. I've got a show on a Monday also. Yeah?
Okay.
So I recognize now. But you know, GKTV, we're here for that. You know,
yes, sir.
Anytime, I'm making this clear now, innit? This is what we're on. Anytime you need our support, media services, you know, we're trying to build that platform to make it the number one. We've got the GKTV is the economic aspect of what we're trying to do and promote, but then you've got gotkush, which is a number one conscious platform, which is for the edutainment, for the music aspect of it. So this deals with more the elder demographic, and this deals with the younger demographic, but we're trying to create a platform to bring the two together.
Yes.
So, you know, you make sure you let us know how we can support you. You need something covered. I know you've got your teams of people out there, but you need something covered and want us to be able to utilize a platform that we've got, then that's what it's here for. We're about trying to make that happen, especially when it comes to the youngers, for the fact all of us was one at one stage. Yes. And, you know, we went through the same problem and see these same problems going on and on, and we need to make a change, especially as the adverse forces against us have become more sophisticated and more closer to fruition of their plans. But look, this is GKTV, this is Twilight Bey. This is not going to be the last time you see this brother sitting in this chair amongst us. As a matter of fact, we're going to be working very closely with him. Also with HMPTV, we've got some programming coming up which you're going to find on GKTV addressing a lot of these issues. Do give out the show, just once again, the show details that you have.
Yes, if people want to get involved in the movement and you want to stay involved with what we're doing because we're getting active and we're making things happen, you can hit us up on the website is Reason, the number 4, and Action. That's also our Twitter handle, and that's another way you can follow us. The web address says it all, Reason for Action. We give you the reason, and then we get out there and we take action. We're not about sitting back and waiting for somebody to save us. We got to save ourselves, and we got to build our own future.
This is what we're about. Like, don't get it twisted around there. This is what we're about. The liberation, ain't no one dropping it from the sky for us. The helping arm we're looking for is at the end of your own hands. This is what we're. This is what we've got to do. We've got to get that working. Okay, we've got to get that working. So if you want to be part of the movement, get prepared to get that working, get your hands dirty. But the rewards are second to none. This is GKTV. We're going to move on. We're out of here. This is African Liberation Day 2015.
In conclusion, Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess the faith of freedom and deprecate agitation are like men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain but can't stand the thunder or the lightning. They want the ocean but they're scared of the roar of the water. He said the struggle we have might be moral or physical, or it might be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. He said, for 20 years I prayed on my knees to God for freedom, but the good Lord gave Frederick no freedom until I got up off my knees and started praying with my feet. He said, if you want respect from white men, why are you looking for pity? The man who respects you doesn't have to pity you, and the man who pities you will never respect you.
That's right.
He said, but most of all, remember, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. I got to call my ancestors. They go with me everywhere I go. They my protection. Because you know you can't put faith in man. They will betray you every time. But ancestors got your back. I call on Father Bailey, Mama Selah, Mama...
There was empires in Africa called Kush, Timbuktu, where every race came to get books. My success to you, even if you wish me the opposite. Sooner or later we'll all see who the prophet is.